and it's about a passage from the Gospel that we see in Matthew chapter 5, verse 3, when he says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit." So Emmanuel brings us a reflection about that. He says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit," the Lord proclaimed. In this passage, however, we do not see Jesus opposing the cultural treasures of humanity, but rather exalting the humility of the heart. The Master reminded us in this chapter of the Beatitudes that it is necessary to open our minds to the light of life, so that wisdom and love may find a secure refuge in our souls. Today, as in the past, we're confronted everywhere by scriptures that are imprisoned in academic museums, crystallized in prejudice, mummified in viewpoints that shadow their vision, and shackled to the futility of reasoning or feeling, adding to the vast ranks of oppression. It is essential then to clear our thoughts in the face of nature and accept the extreme insignificance in which we still stir before the universe. Jesus encouraged us to forget the mental paralysis in which we often indulge, urging us to adopt simplicity as the norm for spiritual ascension. Let us then empty our hearts of all defects and all the ghosts that inferior experiences have imposed on us in the pilgrimage that has brought us to the present. Each day is a new revelation of the Lord for existence. Each companion on the road is a living field in which we can cast the blessed seeds of renewal. Each pain is a blessing for those who continue awake in the edifying knowledge, and each hour in the march can become a planting of beauty and joy if we walk obeying the imperatives of constant work in the infinite good. So let us come together in prayer before we start. Let us take a deep breath, arrive where we are. Elevating our thoughts and our feelings to a place of peace, of serenity, that allows our bodies, our minds to be present and to open our hearts and to hear some of the words from Jesus as we embark on a journey about humility. We ask you, Father, may you help us be humble. May you help us in the journey of finding the places in our lives that inspire us to be humble, and also the places in our lives that challenge us to be humble. And in those, may we find your mercy, your blessings, and your love. It's with a heart full of gratitude that we thank you for the opportunity of having this place, of being us all here together, talking, conversing, and enjoying some time together, whilst learning about what Jesus came to teach us, and edifying our minds and evolving our hearts. May your love surround us with your protection, your serenity, and your kindness. So be it. So be it. And today, well, não está escutando? Deixa eu pegar. Por mais perto aqui. Oh, it's off. It's muted. Pronto, agora vai. Tava muted. see. Here. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. So today we're going to start with a little song, which I'm sure most of you know. Here's a translation. I wouldn't dare to sing the translation. I can give it to you. C'est 50 minutes. Let's do this.
Não, é para passar.
Não,
não entendi, era para dar por. Ah, tá.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thought ahead.
I wouldn't dare to sing it or translate it.
No.
No.
Are you sure?
Luiz, se você puder conseguir colocar. Pode pôr no vídeo também.
Onde o rio abraça a floresta e onde as águas beijam a água, a gente sente como a presença é perto de Deus. Ele significa o seu nosso trabalho. Será ele, se ele não tiver certeza de que cada ser humano carrega em si o dom de ser capaz.
Lima Duarte, é isso? Uau!
Ando devagar, porque já tive pressa, eu levo esse sorriso, porque já chorei demais.
Everybody singing, pode ser.
Hoje eu me sinto mais forte, mais feliz, quem sabe, só levo a certeza de que muito pouco sei, ou nada sei. Conhecer as manhãs e as manhãs, o sabor das massas e das maçãs. É preciso amor para poder pulsar, é preciso paz para poder sorrir, é preciso a chuva para fluir. Penso que cumprir a vida seja simplesmente compreender a marcha e tocando em frente. Como um velho boiadeiro levando a boiada, eu vou tocando os dias pela longa estrada, eu vou. Estrada eu sou. Conhecer as manhãs e as manhãs, o sabor das massas e das maçãs. É preciso amor para poder pulsar, é preciso paz para poder sorrir, é preciso a chuva para fluir. Todo mundo ama um dia, todo mundo chora um dia, a gente chega, outro vai embora. Cada um de nós compõe a sua história e cada ser em si carrega o dom de ser capaz e ser feliz. Conhecer as manhãs e as manhãs, o sabor das massas e das maçãs. É preciso amor para poder pulsar, é preciso paz para poder sorrir, é preciso a chuva para fluir. Ando devagar, porque já tive pressa e levo esse sorriso, porque já chorei demais. Cada um de nós compõe a sua história e cada ser em si carrega o dom de ser capaz e ser feliz.
So, as you listen to that song and you listen to the lyrics, or read the lyrics, as far as virtues go, what are some of the virtues that we might feel through those lyrics, or through the person who's, speaking or saying those lyrics?
Patience.
Patience?
Serenity.
Serenity? Yeah. Humility?
Simplicity.
Simplicity. And it usually makes us feel good, I would say, right? And I wasn't really sure what to talk about today until yesterday, and I was listening to the song, and I felt humility right there and then, which is what inspired me to talk about humility today, and because I think the song has humility written all over it, especially when he describes how we've gone perhaps from a lifetime of being in a hurry, of mostly he was talking about more about pride, and then through the tribulations that pride brought him, he found humility, and in humility he was able to appreciate a lot more of life, which brought this simplicity and this patience and the serenity that you talked about. So we're talking about humility today, and it's a very interesting topic. I love talking about this, mostly because it's something that I need to learn a lot. So it's really good for me to talk about this more and more and more. And to start off, if we were to think about an example of humility that we often talk about, I would say one of the great examples that we have from humility is Jesus himself, especially when we think about how people at the time were expecting Messiah to come as a adorned or let's say a master that would be very rich, that would rule the kingdom and so on and so forth. They were waiting for him with so much material things, and then you see the Messiah coming and being born in a manger. No. How do you say manger? Manjedoura. So something very simple, very humble. And Emmanuel in the book Thought in Life, he brings the reflection, right? Reflecting about humility. You can think about Jesus from heaven to earth as a pledge of redemption and beauty. The Christ of God was born upon the straw of the manger and took his leave from humankind through the arms of the cross. So he came into this earth and left this earth quite humble, quite simple, right? Almost this, without any clothes on a cross. And if you think about the things that we're reminded by, if we're thinking about humanity as a whole, thinking about the past 2, 3, 4,000 years, which one was the one that was so important to us that it ended up dividing time, right? That we know the one that came to divide time and is talked about until today, and it has changed our lives so much, is someone who throughout his entire message, throughout his entire life, taught us humility. He didn't have a big kingdom, he didn't have a big army, he didn't have a big movement that went on and on and on throughout earth himself, but quite the opposite. It was literally the humility that I think inspired all of us to keep going back to him as an example for us to live our lives. Right? More often than not, we ask ourselves, what would Jesus do in this position, especially when we're a little lost? So we can see that what truly touches us, what truly makes the mark, let's say. It's not the kingdoms, it's not the size of the empire, but it's how humble, how truth we are to ourselves. All the kingdoms, all all the big civilizations that existed back then they've all changed, right? They've all gone down and then back up again, but the one that has sustained his kingdom until this day is Jesus. And bear in mind, he only lived talking about his message for 3 years, right? It was quite a short stint that he had that, until today we talk about him. So he truly touched our hearts. And to start off talking about humility, there's one passage from the book Good News that we probably all have heard. It's about the Last Supper. I think we've all heard about that passage from the Last Supper. And there is that point when Jesus starts to wash all the disciples' feet. This is in the gospel as well. And then he says, "You call me Master and Lord, and you're right, for so I am." So here is him, which is something that sometimes we don't understand about humility. Here he is saying to people that, yeah, you call me Master, rightfully so, because I am the Master. So he was aware of who he was. "If I, your Lord and Master, wash your feet, you must also wash one another's feet along the journey of life. For in the kingdom of goodness and truth, the greatest will always be the one who has sincerely made himself the least of all." So this has nothing to do with knowledge, with power, because he had it all. Yet, having all that, he still would serve. He still would sincerely wash everyone's feet. He would sincerely make himself the least of all. So you can see that it has nothing to do with level of knowledge, level of power, but humility is open to all. And again, carrying something from Jesus. I don't know if some of you know the Sermon on the Mount, which was what we read right in the beginning here. Sermon on the Mount starts in Matthew 5, the Gospel. And Jesus, this is a beginning of what we call as Bienaventuranzas, or the Beatitudes in English. And it's really interesting because Jesus kind of gives us a list of virtues, an invitation of virtues here in each of these sentences. And he says, "So blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." So if we were to see, this almost seven virtues that he's showing us, kind of like in a sequence. So back then he was already inviting us to develop our virtues. But I wanted to show the fact that he started with humility. Humble is just the adjective. But he started with humility. So in this journey that we go through to develop our virtues, to improve ourselves, he started with humility. That was the first one. Because it was basically telling us that humility is the door. Humility is the one that opens the door for us to develop all others. Why do you think that is? Why do you think humility is, we can think of it as being the first one to help us kind of develop them all? Any thoughts or ideas? And humility is also the kind of the opposite of humility that we have would be pride. So pride is kind of like that egoic feeling, and then humility we have as the virtue that kind of transforms pride. So why would you think humility would be kind of like the first one?
It's a gateway to all the rest.
It's a gateway to all the rest. And if we have pride, or when we have pride, the thing about pride is that it truly blinds us to everything else about ourselves. Because pride will lead us to think that we're the best, that we know it all. And so, if we are filled with pride, how can we see that we need to develop all these other virtues? So basically, humility, what it's doing to us by transforming our pride, is helping us see. Right? It's taking the blindfold off and letting us see all the other things we're being invited to develop. Whereas pride thinks we're good today. I don't need to do anything else. I'm already the best. And humility, it opens our eyes so we can see what needs to be worked on. Hence, being the first one that Jesus is inviting us. It's that gateway. It's that door that it opens first of all. And yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. I feel like that was a good question. I was thinking, I don't think I have, like, if I were to answer, I don't know. But I feel like with humility, we know it's knowing where we are at. We're not better or worse than anyone else, but at the same time, we also recognize the good things that we have achieved. So it's not just about what I have to do, right? That's also that self-knowledge. Okay, I that's what I am at. I have some good things. I have to work on other things. And I feel like it's with ourselves, where we're doing this to ourselves and we're not for others. Because if you're a peacemaker, you're doing it for someone else. If you're being merciful, you're being merciful. A lot of times, like, we have to do everything to ourselves too, but usually compare to, like, or not compare, are we, in a sense, compare with others. Like, we're doing it for others, it's not for us first. And I think that starts, if I recognize who I am and where I am at, like, I can work on me. That's kind of my reflection. I think
Absolutely.
I don't know if it makes much sense. It's starting to make sense for me.
No, it makes total sense, especially when you talk about knowing where we are. I like the very rude analogy, but thinking about a destination, right? When we put our destination on the GPS, you put the destination, you kind of see where you're going, but the next piece of data you need is where you are. Otherwise, you can't really
That's
trace
right.
your destiny,
That's right.
your journey. So knowing where you are is just as important as knowing where you want to go.
Yeah, it's funny because I was thinking about the same thing as
Oh.
you. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like that, like, being humble reminds us that we are all the same. We are like brothers and sisters, and we are here, like, to learn. And I also think that when you are humble, you start, like, feeling that sense of being here to learn, of being like an apprentice. Like, you don't know everything. And if you think, like, in the evolution of spirits, I think, like, pure spirits, they don't have the ego, is that correct?
Yeah, they transform it all.
They
into
transform,
virtues,
right? And, like, I don't think you can transform your ego without humility.
Exactly.
So that's why it's like the gateway, in my opinion, as well, to all the others. I think it just helps us to see where we are at, here to learn. If it makes sense.
Thank you.
I think the other thing with humble or with humility is that, especially in Portuguese, we kind of associate that with material belongings or richness, if I may say. It's like when you refer to someone, like, being humble is not having, like, resources. And when you think about the word itself, it's like you can have poor people that are extremely proud and unhumble, if I may just make up a word here. And you see rich, like, materially speaking, rich people that are extremely humble, right? So thinking that this is something within and it has no relation with whatever you temporarily have in this world.
Exactly. Thanks, Shu. Yeah, it's truly a state of mind, right? It's a virtue that you build within. And as an example, I thought about patience, to bring an example of how humility can help us with patience. And when we talk about patience, one of the examples that we always bring up here is traffic. I don't know why, but I think it's because it touches on us all.
It's universal.
It's universal, right?
And it's getting worse.
So that's why I thought about bringing that example here, right? So traffic is something that sometimes asks some patience from us, and so let's, a mind exercise or image exercise of thinking about ourselves in traffic, for example, and then someone cuts in front of us, and then our antennas with pride is kind of screaming there, saying,
How dare you?
how dare you go in front of me, right? That's showing I am more important than you, so how dare you cut in front of me. The other one is, perhaps the person is going a little slow, right? So what's pride telling us? Like, well, my time is more important than yours, so let's get moving, get out, right? This is my way, not your way. So again, it's the pride kind of telling these things. Now, think about ourselves in traffic, that slow person in front of us, and we're angry, and just think about humility, just thinking about being humble, like a drop of humility in there. Think about, well, that person's time is just as important as mine. The road is ours, it's not mine. Right? Perhaps they're going through something, they need some more time. So just dropping those drops of humility. And you can kind of see that pride dissociate, fades away, right? And then it opens up patience. Right? Then you can be patient. Right? So you can see how humility can kind of help us develop patience in this example. Right? That's kind of like the power of it. Because humility is, like I said, diluting that pride and allows us to develop the other virtues, in this case, patience. Right? So a bit of a thought exercise.
I always imagine they need to go to the washroom.
There you go. Right? Mind tricks that help us kind of, deal with it.
And if someone honks, imagine they're honking for the person in
Yeah,
front
it's
of
for
you.
someone else. Yeah. There you go. And the last piece, before we move on, and this is an interpretation from Tuvaladides, who I watched a few talks to come up with this one. What do you think? Why do you think Jesus says, "Poor in spirit"? Why is it poor in spirit? And we read what Emmanuel said, that poor in spirit means humble, humility. But it's something that talks about. We heard it from there's a sentence attributed to Socrates that he says, the more I know, the more I realize how much I don't know. Even in the song, I think it talked about something like that. I only carry the certainty that I know very little or nothing at all. And if we were to bring this example here, the poor in spirit, the poor in spirit here means those of us who can realize how grand, how big God is, how big His creation is, how big or how virtuous Jesus is. We start to realize that they're so big and we still have so much to get to. And that's what brings the idea of poor in spirit. It's simply the realization that, yeah, we're small, right, in front of all this greatness that is in front of us. And that as we go through them, we'll find ways to reach that master. But it's realizing right now that we are still in development, that we still are, in quotes, poor in spirit. We still have a lot to learn. And then he says, well, it is those who will basically have the kingdom of heaven. So it's like for those of us who can be humble, it's those of us who will be able to see all the kingdom of heaven, to feel all the greatness of God. We can only see and feel the greatness of God when we have humility in our hearts.
I think
So-
that's a good point too. Sorry,
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it has nothing to do with being poor or rich, but it's really talking about understanding how small we are and how big creation is. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, it was just reflecting on, in regards to those that specific beatitude, I guess, as well. It's just this idea that, you know, the realization, you've said that a few times, and I think that's a key to humility. It's an active, conscious quality rather than a subconscious, because you know, compared it to the prideful person. Both the prideful person and the humble person are both, by matter of fact, poor in spirit. It's just one realizes it and the other one actually thinks that it's a virtue in and of itself, right? And so that it's, the condition is the same, but the approach is completely different. And by approaching it completely different, that's what opens up, you know, the dependent clause there, which is the kingdom of heaven. Because if all that was required is to be poor in spirit, then equally the prideful person and the humble person would be there as well. But there's something more that comes from the humility, and that comes with the conscious realization of who we are and what we are capable of, you know, and what we will one day be by all of these people around us that we see are examples of you know, much more advanced and different approaches, or approaches that maybe we're developing, and then we can just appreciate it in and of ourselves. It's that when you take it from the subconscious to the conscious, that seemingly makes all the difference, both in terms of, you know, what you were just sharing, but also seemingly in terms of what is being implied by what Jesus said.
Yeah, no, thanks. It's a lot. I like what you said. It's the fact is, yeah, we're all poor in spirit, but the prideful, even though they are poor in spirit, they think they're pretty rich in spirit, right? But the reality is they're both. It's just a matter of realization and perception of where we're at, which is what Anna was talking about. So thank you. And I might have to start skipping slides already.
Part 2.
Yeah, we're going to go through a journey here back and forth. Okay, I'll read this one. So, in the book Gospel According to Spiritism, this one, in chapter 5, there is a text called Voluntary Torments, or in Portuguese, Tormentos Voluntários. And the idea here is to show that, in the title itself, that's kind of what it says. It says that the torments that we have in life, not all of them, most of the torments we have in life, those
Which is
tormentos,
it?
they're voluntary. We're causing them. And that's what they're going to develop here. So this is from Spirit, I think, Fenelon, when he says, human beings are constantly in search of the happiness that incessantly escapes them, for spotless happiness does not exist on earth. So I find this very consoling. And I'll start with the end. He says, spotless happiness does not exist in this world. Basically saying that happiness that is constant, right, that has no tribulations, we're happy all the time, that doesn't really exist on earth right now, in this lifetime, right? So let's take that off as something that we're striving for, you know, for that constant happiness, because that would only lead it'll only lead
More
to frustration, right? We're seeking that constant happiness, and the minute we don't feel happiness anymore, we're frustrated. So let's just take that out and basically accept the fact that our happiness here won't be constant. They say, nevertheless, they might at least enjoy relative happiness. So happiness is possible. Absolutely is possible. Probably not that one that's, you know, there all the time. But it is already possible for us to experience happiness. The one thing they caution us is that, however, where we're searching for that happiness, you know, in the perishable things, in the material pleasures, that's not where we're going to find it. Because whenever we find happiness in those perishable things, in those material pleasures, we can see that they're very unstable, because our happiness then is dependent on something that we can't control, right? So they advise us to look for happiness in the pleasures of the soul. What could that be? They say instead of seeking peace of mind, and then they put quotations there, which is the only real happiness in this world. So another word for happiness would be peace of mind for us here. So instead of seeking peace of mind, we find ourselves sometimes being avid for anything that can agitate or upset us. We're constantly looking for sensations, right? That can always make us really, really excited to a sense of euphoria, or it can bring us down to upset ourselves. And oddly enough, they seem to create on purpose the torments that were up to them to avoid, right? So that's where they're saying it's, a lot of times it's us creating those torments. As an example, he says, are there any greater torments than those caused by envy and jealousy? For the envious and jealous, there is no rest. They're in constant fever. Right? So for example, the envy that we feel, envy is something, it's wanting something that we don't have, right? And
That
it's
others
something
have.
that others have, yeah. So sometimes we think about envy of material things, like having a certain job, having a certain house, a certain car, and so on. But here, mostly talking about moral aspects. So it could be envious of someone who has humility, or a person who has patience, right? We can be envious of that as well. And then jealousy involves relationships, is when you want the attention from someone and so forth. So these things, we create them, right? We create the envy, we create the jealousy, and they are constantly, it's a constant fever to us, right? Because we're constantly, especially on the envy side, let's say I envy someone, I'm constantly trying to understand where they're at, so I can measure myself. So it's like a constant fever that we go through. And this is something, again, that we are creating. So then, now the text is much bigger than this, but then towards the end, they'll tell us the opposite way. So on the other hand, how many torments will those who know how to be content with what they have spare themselves? It's just a thought exercise, right? If I can be content with what I have, and again, the focus is not about material things, but more on the moral aspect of things. If I can be content with who I am today, how much torment am I going to spare myself from, right? That peace of mind that will come when I'm content with what I have today. Those who behold without envy what they do not have, and who do not try to appear to be what they are not. They are serene because they do not create imaginary needs for themselves. And there are quite a few passages from Shikshavya that talks about the imaginary needs that we create. And we can see this, moving through life. If you think about perhaps a few years ago or something, you could endure a lot more than you can today. You've created some needs that are fake in a way. And no time today, but Shiku has a lot of stories about this. And then to end, he says, and in the midst of life's storms, isn't serenity the real happiness? Right? A state of peace of mind. Wouldn't that be the happiness that we all truly are searching for? So that's a bit of a reflection that we have from the gospel. And then talking about humility again is this, I love this passage about André Luiz. So André Luiz is it's a spirit that wrote through Chico Xavier, and he wrote a book called Green Sign, or Sinal Verde. And in chapter 26 he talks about happiness, which is kind of what the previous text was talking about. And these spirits, they usually don't use words that are very direct in terms of like words like never or must or impossible. They don't use these words lightly, right? They only write it very few times because when it's necessary in a way. And here, that's one of the times when Andrés used the word impossible. He said, study yourself, observing that self-awareness brings humility, and without humility it is impossible to be happy. So if we had any doubt about the importance of humility, you have Andrés right there telling us that it's just impossible to be happy without humility. Why do you think that is?
Because the soul is not at peace. It's always agitated. It's always
Mhm.
like a water.
Exactly.
Because you're not okay with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You're always searching, comparing,
Mm-hmm.
looking for those needs.
Mm-hmm.
They're usually masking or hiding things that we have to work on,
Mhm.
whether you just put other things to kind of soothe that,
Mm-hmm.
soothe that soul that is not resting. So, I don't know, at least like the days I'll do that to try to find that void.
And exactly, and if we can do another thought exercise, is to again bring humility, right? And the beauty of humility is that you know, if we're sitting here today and we start thinking about the things that bring us angst or anxiety and things that we want to change, you know, if we start to go through them and realizing that, you know, that's okay, it's part of my journey. I'll be able to go through this. I'm an apprentice. I'm going to learn from it. And if we go through that, and we let humility sink in, we let humility truly kind of embalm our hearts, we'll realize the happiness will just kind of open up. We'll realize that happiness is right there. So it's not something that it's out there. If humility is present, that happiness can kind of shine today. We can realize that happiness is already here. And that's why it kind of opens the door for us to see that we truly have everything that we need today.
I think it brings a lot of this sense of I am where I'm supposed to be and not think about where I want or like all the
Mhm,
distractions
mhm,
of
mhm.
life, right? Either comparing to other people or but it's not enough and then you're looking at something you still don't have. It's I like the word contentment because it's just like you're there.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Exactly.
And I think that without self-awareness, you kind of live in autopilot.
Yes.
So you're just leaving your instincts, your needs, basic needs speak
Mhm.
louder sometimes. When you're able to, even our bodies, I feel like they're made for us to feel things. So like, you know, like
Mhm.
emotions and
Yeah.
like this is making you feel sick or headache. So
doesn't
you know
sit
that there's
well,
something
yeah.
wrong. And when you stop and wonder and rationalize about
Mhm.
those things, I think that it helps
Mm-hmm.
bring that up.
That's beautiful, Cynthia. Thank you for that reminder, because our pride is up here, right? So it really blinds us in a way. But like you said, our
Easier said than
body.
done, of course.
Yeah, obviously.
Not self-aware.
But it's like our bodies is most often than not, they're telling us kind of like what we need, where the pain points are.
There's something wrong.
There's
I don't
something
feel
wrong,
comfortable,
yeah.
right? We know that, but
Yeah.
sometimes we just continue just doing what we gotta
Yeah.
do without really putting much thought into it.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you.
Mhm.
And so yeah, you can see that kind of humility starts to open up our minds to see all the great, basically the kingdom of heaven that Jesus told us. The kingdom of heaven is not somewhere or some place that we'll get to at some point, but it can be here now. And if we now talk about the word humility, where it kind of came from Latin, and then if you go back from Greek, humility, that first part of the word in Greek goes back to humus, and humus means fertile soil. So humility is another word for humility would be a fertile soil, fertile soil. So if you keep that in mind, and then we're going to bring a reflection that we always talk about at FSS here, and it's a reflection that was brought to us by Joana de Angelis, who's the spirit guide of Divaldo Pereira Franco. In a lot of her books, she brings the analogy that our virtues, they're like seeds in us. Right? We all have the virtues within us, but they're small little seeds, right? Our work is to kind of grow them. And then I love that reflection, because if we think about all our virtues as seeds, they're planted in the soil. And it's humility that's going to make that soil fertile. So it's bringing a reflection from Joana that goes along with the reflection of Jesus, saying that humility kind of opens the door for us to develop others. The same way you can think about it is how humility is it's making our soil fertile so we can develop all others, so they can grow. And the other reflection that St. Augustine actually brings to us a lot of times is that's why we have a tree here, is the analogy, together with self-awareness and all that, of how important it is for us to create deep roots, which is what is going to bring us strength to grow, which would be, humility will help us see within, will help us understand ourselves, will help us with self-awareness. Once once we're understanding that, then we can go and grow outwards. But the importance to grow inwards is really profound, that we can see. So I found it a very interesting reflection. And so, again, talking about humility, just to bring a few more texts here. This is again from the book Thought of Life, which I already brought a few things from, where Emmanuel talks about humility. There's a whole chapter. He says, "Whoever embodies the laurels of this almost unknown virtue." So Emmanuel is already poking at us, saying that humility is almost unknown. Basically, we're all kind of here invited to focus on it. So those who embody humility accepts without constraint the duty to work and to serve for the benefit of all. Interesting, he didn't say benefit of others, but benefit of all, meaning including ourselves in it. Thus assimilating the blessing of balance and giving substance to the manifestation of the divine laws, which never boast of their own gifts. So it's in humility that we can find, right, the balance and basically see all the manifestation of the divine laws that exist around the world and within ourselves as well. To how he ends saying, which never boast of their own gifts. That's where humility never tries to boost ourselves or see how much I'm doing, see how much charity I'm working on, and so on and so forth, right? It always focuses on our own growth. And then he ends the text, or close to end, he says, which I love, he says, humility is not servitude, which is something that sometimes we think it is. Humility is not servitude. Servitude is the consequence of humility, but it's not humility itself. He says, humility is above all independence. It's an inner freedom that arises from the depths of the spirit, sustaining its constant renewal toward the good. So he's telling us that humility is independence. Humility is freedom. If we think about all the things that pride kind of puts on our back and makes us feel heavy, makes us feel stuck, humility is what can bring us independence, is what can bring us freedom. Think about envy, think about jealousy, how much that handcuffs us, how much that handcuffs our minds to be constantly thinking about that other person. Humility can set us free. That's why the question on the topic today was, can humility free us from our pains? And I'm talking about moral pains, more so. So humility in itself brings us independence and freedom. As a result of humility, obviously there is the servitude part of it, but servitude is not humility itself. Because I could be serving others, but be very prideful, right? So acts of service in itself is not humility. It's basically how you're feeling within that truly is humility. And if we were to think about some other things, there's so much I wanted to bring about it. But in the Spirit's book here, there are two questions that Kardec asks us about the ability of us to see the world or to accept help. That he talks about humility and how important it is, basically for us to see how humility is kind of everywhere. He asks, how should we proceed to expand our spiritual capacity? So what should we do, right, to grow, to expand our spiritual capacity? He says, we have not yet found a higher and more beautiful formula than that of self-effort within humility and love. So again, thinking about our spiritual journey, about our virtues, can't get there without humility or without love. And the second question that we sometimes ask ourselves, and now he's talking about, how we have so many good spirits out there. We have Jesus, we have our guardian angels, and so many others that are out there to help us. He asks, what are the biggest obstacles that their goodness encounters in us? So they have a lot of desire to help us. What are the obstacles that prevents them from helping us? So that we receive their affectionate and efficient help. So what is that obstacle? Yeah. So he says, the greatest psychic obstacle faced by the earthly man to his friends and mentors of his spirituality come from the absence of sincere humility in their hearts. So humility is also kind of putting out barriers and obstacles for us to receive help from all these that are around us. And a lot of times it's really easy, quote unquote, for us to feel good or feel some good energies here at a Spiritist center, right? Because our mindset is usually a little bit more serene. But how about out there, right? How's my humility out there? Because we can feel the same energy we feel here. We could feel out there as well, right? If we are in a state of mind that would allow all that to kind of sink in, all that to come in. If that makes any sense, right?
I'm curious, Victor, in that sense, when we went back to that quote from Fennelly, you talked about how it's not possible to have spotless happiness.
Mm-hmm.
Then you said, we could try for relative happiness instead.
Yep.
Which was more this humble happiness that comes from a peace of mind. Yeah. Is that, whether you personally or as far as the literature is concerned, is that possible to acquire constantly here?
So constantly would be that spotless happiness, right? It's that constance to it. So when they say that's not possible here, so it's for us not to impose ourselves the demands of reaching that goal here, because that can be very heavy. So it's the idea that, happiness will have its ups and downs, and that's okay. And that kind of releases the pride of wanting that constant happiness. It's basically in that aspect of things, if that makes sense.
It does. I guess my reflection would just be, so then, does that then mean that it's, as far as that's concerned, it's not possible to have a perpetual state of peace of mind on this earth?
In I would say this
On Earth?
lifetime, where we are here, apart from if you're a pure spirit, that like Jesus came. Based on his words, I don't think so.
And,
If
sorry.
I may just, because I was thinking a little bit about that too. Maybe there are some spirits incarnated that can already achieve that. Like when they are, as Victor said, they're a lot more evolved. But I feel like what maybe the way I interpret it is like we are still affected by the trials and expiations and the sadness that happens. If we lose a loved one, or if we're going through like illness, we're still gonna have those ups and downs. We may still be content with the life we have, in a sense, so those things don't affect us as much, but we're still gonna have those ups and downs. One day, someone told me, and I can't remember where, or maybe I read somewhere, like it's a heartbeat. If it's like flat, we are dead. So it has the ups and downs. So the thing is like if we have more ups than downs, that's the best we can do now. But we still have that constant, you know, we can still have that contentment, I guess. But I feel like for most of us, it's still like an exercise we have to do.
Mhm.
Something bad happened, like, okay, but, you know, I still have this, you know, I have my faith, I understand that that's temporary or whatever it is. I think it's a journey different for everyone,
And
but I think happiness can be part of the journey. But maybe that peace of
Not a
mind that it's
constant.
100% the time, maybe we go down and then okay, go back to like, okay, I'm still content, but I will still feel the things that affect us. I don't know.
Just like
And-
when you
I'm
see
talking about me
wars,
because I am affected a lot.
you see wars happening, like,
Yeah.
okay, you can close your eyes and think about all the good things you have, but you're
Yeah.
not being humble enough to see what
Yeah.
people are going through, and so
Yeah.
many people, you know, we understand that everyone's here for a reason, but in this world, in the level that I believe that we are,
Mhm.
just by being here,
Yeah.
I think that,
And yeah, thank
it's
you.
impossible.
I don't know
Let
if
me-
it
let me
makes
just-
sense.
Let me just rephrase what I said until as opposed to impossible. If let's say we get to that point of constant happiness, we don't need to be there anymore.
That's fair.
I was
That's what I'll
thinking,
do.
even
It's
like-
no.
Chico Xavier and Divaldo, if you go a little deeper in their lives, like there were lots of times that they weren't happy, they were questioning, and they were feeling like,
Mhm.
and that brings me like, it makes it relatable to say, okay, like
Yeah.
they go through that too. Less than I do, less intense than I do, and less frequent,
Mhm.
but it happens.
Mhm.
So it's just.
Mhm.
And I remember like Dalai Lama also says how much he's impacted by everything in the world. He just tries to guide his mind or
Mhm.
redirect it and not get so much suffering from it. So it's a constant work, it's constant task.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And just to end, again, Emmanuel, that's how he ends the text about humility. He says, to cultivate humility is to move forward. Humility is always an action. Again, thinking about a fertile soil. It's alive. A fertile soil is alive. It's always looking at moving forward. So humility has nothing to do with being stale or stopped or not doing anything. Quite the contrary. It's about moving forward without becoming attached. To protect the best of oneself upon the pathways of the world. To forget all wrongs and to joyfully, I love this one, joyfully begin again the task of love each day. When we wake up each day, to think about our goals for the day, the first one is our task to love. It's the first one. And it's every day. It's every day. And that in itself is where we can find some humility in our hearts. That's all. I apologize for the time.
Mhm.
I wish we had more time to talk, to be honest, because I had more slides, but
I guess
I
it's
really
ideas
appreciate
for others.
it. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go more deep.
I had to skip a few, but yeah, let's end in in a prayer so we can get those kids in here for some passes. They seem to be quiet today. Okay. So let's be present here. Feel all the good energy, the serenity, the peace. And asking our Master Jesus, our model and guide of humility, to help us. Jesus, please, if you could, give us some drops of humility in our hearts to dissolve some of the pride, transforming it to humility, to serenity, to peace of mind. We ask you, Lord, that we may find the strength to do the things that will bring us peace of mind, to do the things that will quench the thirst of our spirit, our mortal spirit. So in the humbleness and the humility, we may see, we may feel the kingdom of heaven and be at peace. May your love surround us with protection, kindness, and serenity today and tomorrow. So be it.